I want to do this book justice.
Yeah.
And not like, I don't want to like Chandler Bing it. Like I don't want to get uncomfortable and then make bad comedies. So you have to stop me if I get, like when I get giggly in therapy. I'll be like, you'll be like, be serious. Hi, this is Caitlin.
And this is Sharon.
And welcome to Real Housewives on Real Housewives, where we unravel housewives story threads and keep the tea flowing.
So chic.
Hold on to your reading glasses.
Today we're digging into The Weight of Beautiful, a book by Jackie Goldschneider from Real Housewives of New Jersey, season 13. In her own words, she says, "This is my story, but it is also the story of millions of people like me, suffering in silence and striving to lead healthy, happy lives in recovery from eating disorders. My story is for all of us."
Yeah, so that kind of gives our little warning because this is about eating disorders. It's a beautiful book, but it's more serious than the books we are used to doing.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can do it justice.
It's a very serious book, but it was very good.
But it was well written. Let's jump in and talk about it.
Okay, wait, what year was this written?
Oh, no, I asked that to Sharon in all seriousness.
Because it literally came out.
Came out like Tuesday. It was the 26th of September, 2023.
We're like, it was written on Tuesday, Caitlin.
I better go look it up really fast. Like, oh, wait, it was this week. All right, so this book just dropped. I haven't seen a lot of the press out about it because I didn't really want to feel swayed one way or the other. But she's had a lot of things online and it seems like it's going well.
Oh, good.
All right, what is the best part? What did you like about this book? The hot tea.
Okay. Well, in addition to just knowing more about Jackie, I liked a lot of the references to things when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. It just brought me back. Like she said, she was talking about the popular girl at school, Steph, and she said she must have smelled good also. She probably wore something trendy like CK1. Yes. And then she says the stores at the mall were for skinny girls, especially the worst store in the whole world, 579.
I hadn't given that store a second thought until I read this.
When I heard that, I was like, oh my God, I remember that store. And I remember thinking, wow, it's only for those sizes and that's it.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was kind of bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Like you're really excluding a lot of
shoppers.
Of people. Doesn't seem like a good business decision.
No, it does not.
I don't know.
No, it is funny because I do think it was like a lot of our childhood in kind of a way. I mean, she's older than us, but like very similar things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I have some more things, but what are some of yours?
Well, for one, I did think it was really beautifully written. Like it's very honest. It's very heartfelt. Mm-hmm. I've never had anorexia, but I've dieted. And so I recognized kind of like when she was talking about that fat girl in her who wanted to be liked by the men. And then it was interesting because she talked so much about being overweight and about the anorexia. Like compared to some books that I've read, it made me think a lot of, because I read Unbearable Lightness by Portia de Rossi, which is like her struggle with anorexia. And she struggled with more the anorexia part. It was interesting with Jackie because I feel like she covered both ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And, for me, like I've put on quite a lot of weight. So like I'm more on that side of it, but I've dieted a lot. And so I could kind of see those losing patterns and the things she talked about and the things she obsessed about. Like I really related to a lot of that. And there were parts of it that like I got a little choked up because it's like, why can't we be happy with our bodies? Mm-hmm. Like when she just said like, all I want to be is normal. Like I want to eat normally. And like, oh my God, I've wanted that my whole life. Like I see other people and they just eat something and they stop. Or like they reach a certain weight and they're like, oh, I got to come back down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, why are some of us so hardwired to not be able to stop at the extremes or just to struggle so much with it? Like it's such a fight.
Yeah. There was a quote in there where she said she like looked around. She's like, why does everyone else have so much self-control or something like that? She's thinking about herself. Mm-hmm. And it was an interesting thing because I thought that about different things. Yeah. Like, you like look around, you're like, how does everyone else do this so perfectly or so normal in this?
And I really felt like I understood that. And it was interesting when she said anorexia was about control. Like it was the one thing that she could control. And I thought that was really interesting because I guess I don't always think about it in that term, but that is what it is.
Yeah. And I did find it fascinating that it's like, well, she had been overweight. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just a fear of like, well, I could look back. Like she truly had been overweight and she was scared of just going out of control. Yeah, it was. She was scared of going out of control and ending up back there. And that's what made it so much harder, I think, because she actually had been there and she could actually see going back there.
Right. Yes.
Versus
so the fear was even.
Yeah.
It was both irrational in a way, but also a little bit rational in a way. And that's what made it worse. She said that at one point, like, I'll figure it out one day how to look more like them and less like me. And like, that broke my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like,
and you know what's sad?
We all
Because they
do that.
showed those pictures of her when she was a kid, and she had this chubby little face, and she was cute.
She was a cute kid.
She was really cute.
She was. I know. And it is hard when like you're looking from the outside.
Yeah.
It's like you can see it, and it's so sad when a person can't see how beautiful they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because really everybody's beautiful, and it's just that we all get in our own heads. It's so funny that like there's this part of us in our own minds that can both be a part of us and also a part of us that's kind of like lying to us
Mm-hmm.
and not giving us the whole story. And it's so interesting because you think every part of you is you and every thought that you have is your thought. And so like it must be the truth. And it's interesting when you kind of see how so many of these things like in the extreme like this, because we all do it in bits,
Mm-hmm.
about how you can just lie to yourself, you
Mhm.
know? And it's kind of, it's scary, you know,
It is
because it's so
interesting
easy.
because I think to myself, I truly don't think I lie to myself about anything.
Mm-hmm. I think we all think that.
Like, do we all think that?
Yes.
And we all like. No, I really think I'm like. No, I
Yeah.
know you guys lie about stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't
No,
lie about stuff. To
It's
myself.
like, so I do parts work in therapy with my therapist, and sometimes it's like she'll say, well, that part is just a part of you, but it's like there's a part of me that I kind of like, I'm like, no, she's not, she's wrong. It's like there's a part of you that feels more like you than any other. And I know
yeah.
what she's saying. Like I know she's saying that there's all these parts of you and they protect you in different ways. But it's like there's always this one that I'll hit up against and I'll be like, except for that one's telling me the truth. It's like, yeah, it's like, why do we have this like part of our brain? Like I know it protects us, but it goes to the extreme sometimes.
Yeah. One of my other favorite things was this line where Teresa was talking about Evan cheating, and Teresa tells Jackie,
Mhm.
I'm a confident person. You're not. I like hanging out with confident people. And Jackie says, did you get that confidence in jail? I just, love it, love it, love it. And then
Yeah.
in the same area, talking about this interaction, Jackie said she felt like throwing the platter of spaghetti all over Teresa's head. And all I could think is like, I have wanted to like hurt people, but I've never wanted to like throw food on them or drinks.
That does seem like more of a
This is
Jersey
just a
thing.
housewife
It is a
thing.
housewife thing.
Like to throw food and drinks on people.
It is. Like I just that desire. Now I'm like afraid I'm gonna have it.
I
Sometimes
know.
I'm just gonna be sitting there a plate and you're gonna be like, put it down.
One day I'm just going to get excited and chuck my Diet Dr. Pepper at you.
No, but see, then you know you'd be sad because it would be gone.
Oh,
Maybe our problem
yes.
is that we like
We
food and
like
drink
food
too
too
much. And so we're like, don't throw that plate. Someone could eat that
Yeah,
plate of pasta.
exactly.
That's terrible. Why would you do that?
Did you have anything else you liked that you wanted to?
I think I'll have some other things as we go
Okay.
through it, but that was my main
All right.
parts.
The worst part, what didn't you like about the book? The iced tea.
Iced tea. I really said no parts because so much of the book was good, even the parts that were hard.
Mhm.
But it was a hard book. And it caused you to think about some hard things. One of the things that really got to me was when she was talking about how her parents talked about dieting like her whole childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought a little bit like I was aware of my mom dieting
Mm-hmm.
as a kid. And it was like trying to think, I wonder how that shaped me. I'm worried that my kids are aware of my husband and I dieting. And is that going to shape how they view food? And that scares me a little. Like my littlest is so good at like self-monitoring what he eats. And we're always joking because we're like, how did he out of like all of us now? How is he the one that like that like got that ability to understand like where that line is? Because the rest of us like don't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I don't want to set my kids up for failure, but you want to be healthy in your own life. And it's like, how do you figure that out without your kids catching on, I guess, that you're doing these things? Or like I just I don't want that scared me. Like I don't want my kids to have this messed up dynamic around food because I've fought with food. You know, and like, how do you not carry that forward?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is interesting. I honestly believe, and this is, especially today with all the medications, I honestly believe in 20 years, no one will be overweight anymore.
Wouldn't that be, that's interesting.
And life might be totally different. Like what?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't because that just seems like something so many people have struggled with.
Yeah,
I know like it's been my struggle.
It's such a big part of so much of society and life.
I know it does. I mean, I can think about how much probably my mental energy that has been like expended thinking about that.
What will they find something else to worry about?
What's a new hobby they're going to get? I don't know.
Yeah, one thing with her parents, when her dad would look back and laugh at how big she was.
Yeah.
Because to him, it was funny because now she's skinny.
Yes.
It's
like she'd won the game.
Yeah. He didn't really understand how hurt. It's like every time she looked back at that, she still hurt. And she still was hurt by everything that happened.
Yeah.
She was still hiding from all that.
Right.
So it really hurt me to hear that her dad was laughing and she's like, he just doesn't understand eating disorders.
Because it was interesting the way the book was written and the way you get into it. I felt like you saw this progression almost of her like fading away and getting lesser and lesser as you went further into the book. Like you could just see more and more of her like go away. It was heartbreaking. And so like then when he brings that back and then says, well, you won, it's like, at what cost? You know?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Another part, this is just a sad part of the book, so I'll bring it up here. Her brother, who, I don't know, he has some sort of disability.
Yeah, she wasn't clear about what.
Yeah.
She said
but everyone at school, like, made fun of him, and they would, like, have him dancing and doing stuff, and they were laughing at him, but he thought he was entertaining them when they were really mocking him. Oh, that was so hard to read. And she said he was, like, the sweetest guy in the world. And
I read somewhere online that they were pretty close in age, but then he'd been held back too. So they ended up going to the same grade. And so they kind of felt like twins. And that's one of the reasons that they were so close growing up.
Oh, another thing. This is so weird. And this goes back to earlier.
Yeah.
One of her memories is one of my memories too. She says, I laid eyes on the thinnest woman I think I have ever seen. Fiona Apple was 18 years old in the video for her song Criminal.
Yeah.
I remember that video. So 100%. Yes. I remember wanting to be that skinny. Yes. That video 100% stuck with me, and I thought about it a lot.
That's interesting.
That's so weird. Yeah. I'm like, how many lives did that video ruin?
I know.
Thanks, Fiona Apple.
Yeah, I wouldn't have pulled that video out, but you're right. At that point, there was like a shift in what was like beautiful and sexy, and it went from like being kind of curvy and voluptuous to like that stick thin, no body fat image. Yeah, it's interesting. I also like too when she said, I knew that like at the point that she started, like I think it was doing Weight Watchers, but she kind of said like, I knew that day I was starting something life-changing, and what I didn't know that there would be another day of my life when I wasn't tortured by food. And it's so scary because it is true. Like once you kind of start down that road, it always kind of comes back to that in your mind. And I don't, it is tricky as to like how it's so hard. Like so many of us have gone down this road, and how do you come back to yourself happily and naturally and healthy? It's just tricky because it's like in a lot of ways, she was trying to shed all that extra weight. And like, I think too, sometimes like with gaining weight, sometimes you hide behind those protective walls of the weight too. It's like, you can use it either way. And it's like, I remember too, like when I got to like, I guess I call it like my size 4 era, like that was my Taylor Swift era. But like, I remember when I could put on a pair of size 4 pants, like around the time I got married. And it's like, I do remember being terrified to eat too much. Like I remember like, I was worried about things, about how many calories were on things. What was in, if I went to a restaurant, it was like, how much was in this? How much was in that? Like, and I didn't think about it until I was reading it in her book, but it was like, yeah, I was terrified to eat. So no wonder this didn't stay for me. It was too hard. Like I was too self-conscious to like, I don't know, like you're so aware of it. And then there's a point at which you just almost either you go down the path she went down or you give up because it's just too hard.
Yeah.
Definitely agree. I don't know. It's so hard.
That's like when I was my senior year of college, I found if I ate a bowl of Cheerios at like noon, and then at like 6, I ate like a Weight Watchers meal. And that's all I ate for the day for like a semester. And my weight just stayed nice where I wanted it. Right. And it was so beautiful. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I am so hungry and this is probably not healthy.
It's like, but at what cost? And the maintaining of it. And or like, I remember wanting to go out and eat whatever I wanted, or like to go out to the bars and stuff. I remember not eating all day. Yeah. Like I wouldn't eat because I was like, well, I'm going to eat at 6.
Exactly. And then you get drunk.
And then, also not
you get even drunker because you didn't eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really became her identity. And that's what was so sad. It's like her identity was that she didn't have an identity. She was looked over. People ignored her.
That's a really good point.
And that now she had this reason for people to look at her.
Yeah.
And in society, it's a good reason. And it's like, even if she was too skinny, it's something that like she did well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people can't do that. She achieved something a lot of people can't
That's interesting when you said that. Like, so like what she was doing was like kind of wanting to be seen. And then sometimes I think with gaining weight, it's like, I don't want to be seen. Like, so it's sort of an interesting. Yeah. That like there's a part of you, like, because you think like, that's not really whatever. It's eating, but there is so much more to it.
And then there was a line when she was going to get help, and she says, I think she's at the eating disorder center. She says, like, as she walked behind the nurse, she thought she didn't look thin enough to be there. Yeah. And that was really interesting because it's almost like she's shaming herself for not being thinner, or she's not anorexic enough, or she doesn't
she went Was it that one doctor she went to and the nurse said, "Oh, are you here for an eating disorder?
You don't look like you have an eating disorder."
Yeah, and so she was like, "Oh, never mind, I'm not." She's like, "Oh, that makes sense because that was in your chart, but I didn't see that." And I'm like,
and then she thought she was fat. She's
like, "Oh my God, I just saw like everything in her just like crumple."
And it's like maybe she thought she didn't deserve help unless she was at death's door, but I really don't know where to go with that.
I do think that's hard. It's like that's a whole other thing. It's like asking for help, and at what point do you ask for help?
And it's almost like she's embarrassed to not be thinner when she's asking for help.
Right, exactly. Like, well, I don't need this enough. Like, and I think we all do that at certain times. So like, I'm not bad enough. Right. They're worse off. So it's like, but everyone deserves help.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone deserves a chance. Yeah.
So it really opened my eyes to remembering with eating disorders, you can't necessarily see how much of an eating disorder people have.
Right. You can't see in their head.
Right. You can't see in their head. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And
you can't just judge it by its cover. Like you have to, and I think it's hard for people. I think it's really hard to take that step and say, I have a problem in any aspect. So like if someone even hints that they do, I think you have to take it seriously. Like, anytime that someone brings it up and not just go, well, I'm looking at you and I think you're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's like, think about it like when your kids, they bump their toe into something and it's like, they want you to go, oh, is it okay? Let me look, let me kiss it. They don't want you to go, yeah, whatever, you're fine. Yeah, that was like, that's not even the hard part of the floor. Like nobody wants that. Like you can't treat anybody that way.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to finish the book?
About 5 hours. I read pretty quickly.
That's what I wrote too, 4 to 5.
Okay. Were there parts of the book you need to talk about?
Yeah, I actually have. See, this is where I put a bunch of my stuff. Okay, one thing I thought just was interesting, just from a Housewives perspective. So she hated being videotaped, and she always ran up and covered the lens. And it just made me think, because we'd just done Melissa's book. Melissa was the exact opposite. She told that whole story about how her whole life she wanted to be videotaped. She wanted to sing, and so she felt so comfortable on camera because she'd been on camera her entire life. And it was just so interesting, to see those oppositional things. The other thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about was the Weight Watchers parts for me were just so reminiscent, because I remember going to my first meeting. I remember doing that when I was in college. I was so obsessed with doing it, and I did lose the weight. But when I would go visit my husband at college, he was in Oregon, and I would go and find a Weight Watchers meeting there. I went to weird churches Weight Watchers meetings there. I went to the one that was next to the Trader Joe's. I mean, I was that, I'm going to keep up with it. Even if I was there for a weekend or when I would spend my Jan term there. And it's to think about it now, it's kind of like she was saying too, it's someone so young and impressionable, and you're taking them into these meetings and teaching them. I don't know. It's interesting.
The Weight Watchers thing was fascinating to me because the first time, so she goes to Weight Watchers when her doctor, she's a senior in high school.
Yeah.
The doctor tells her, you don't want to go to college fat, which is, oh my God.
I know.
And then, and then he tells her to try Weight Watchers.
Yeah.
And then she writes are you effing kidding me? I've been searching for this my whole life. The exact formula for being thin. I could follow directions, and I was going to do it. But then I was wondering, so let's say this kids today, so she's going into college. She didn't really have the internet as much.
No.
So kids today would have had this, they have this information now.
Yeah.
Would she have had an eating disorder younger, do you think?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, because it's interesting. She said, she had to carry the book. I remember when it wasn't digital.
Yeah.
And you had to write it all down in little journals, and you had to carry the little book. And I remember trying to figure out if I could put the book in my purse and to go places.
Yeah. And she said she felt now she had the information.
Yeah.
Now today you can go online and get whatever wacko information you want.
Right. That's true. And the interesting thing too, it's I used to be, I was a so pro Weight Watchers person. And I still, I don't know. I guess I don't know how I feel about them. But they have changed their formula.
Yeah.
A lot. Because I remember the first time I saw it, I was well, it's math.
Yeah.
It's the math. So we're good. But it's they've changed a lot. When she said, it was less than 1,000 calories or something for some of those exchanges. It's whew.
Yeah. A lot of these, the vestiges from the old days where it's you can't eat fat and this. And
yeah. Because people worry about the images with kids. Everyone's seeing all these images younger. But you're right. What about the information on how to dangerously diet younger? Is that going to be a huge problem?
And then my other question was, and I guess I could look at today's eating disorder rates, but with today, there's more of a body positivity movement. Does that counteract this? Would that have helped her, or would that if that doesn't show up enough?
I don't know. I do think there's a lot more body positivity than there used to be, or people showing what they look like without makeup online and those kind of things that I don't think existed when we were a kid. Can you? I can't picture anything but kind of knowing what the ideal was and that we should be the ideal.
Right.
So maybe, I guess I'm really banking some hope on the fact that that might change things.
Yeah, me too.
It's like, because I could just see too, like these moments that she just like sunk deeper and deeper into it. It's like when she was on vacation and she had the tuna packets.
Oh my
she was eating them in the
God. Oh my
bathroom, and it
God.
was just like, oh my God, like it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it like because it grosses you out, and you're like,
Yeah.
you know, she didn't. It's
She
just
didn't want to do it. She couldn't not do it. Yeah,
It's-
and it's like it's that like all or nothing thinking that everyone is always talking
Mhm.
about. And it's like I always felt like I don't think I could have kept up the level that like she did.
Mhm.
But it's like I remember recognizing that certain things would make me, and I was always joking like crazy, like running on a treadmill. I will start to count down the seconds it makes me nuts, and like the calorie counting, it will be like I can't focus on anything else.
Right.
And so like I can see these little flashes of like, and to imagine the way she was and having to do that 24/7. When I get these little flashes of things, but then I can kind of flip it off a little bit better.
Mhm.
You can just see that like disease just creeping in. And like if you're a hard worker and you have that, drive behind you, it's so scary how easy
Yeah.
it is to feel like you're succeeding at it when it's becoming this dangerous thing.
Yeah, and it's this huge part of her life, and
Mm-hmm.
I wonder when you're like thinking of being a stay-at-home mom,
Mm-hmm.
you don't always have much to distract you.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
man, if you want to distract, like sometimes I want to
Yeah.
distract myself away from food because I'm a
Mhm.
stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Like, so if I wanted to, it seems like you can get deeper into stuff when you're at
Mhm.
home
I do think so.
watching kids.
Because like she said, COVID-19,
Yeah,
like having to stay home for that was a
exactly.
huge problem.
It was so sad. It was
Yeah,
heartbreaking to read.
It was a really
like,
hard book.
yeah.
And she was so honest. I mean, I know we asked that question later, but
Yeah.
like
She
yeah.
was. And at times, like, it made me cringe because, like, when you felt those things before and you just
Yes.
cringe and it makes you feel.
Mhm.
And so I imagine for her writing it
Yeah.
was really cringy.
Mhm.
And she did. She
Yeah.
wrote it all, you know.
Yeah. And I do think it's like the interesting, like I'm going to compare it to Portia's book again, but it's like I read Portia's and it was also so heartbreaking and just so hard to read, but so beautiful at the same time. Because when someone's that honest about their journey, like you can't help but think that's really incredible. And that's how I do feel about Jackie's too. But again, what's interesting with Jackie is that she's just had both sides of the journey. She's had the being overweight and she's had the being underweight. And I just think there's so much that, I mean, most of us have struggled at some point in time with something, and you can relate to parts of her book, whether you have an eating disorder or not.
Uh-huh.
And that's a really impressive way to write a book.
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely.
yeah. What about you?
Oh, so I have another kind of weird thought.
Mhm.
Okay. If you think she were on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills,
Oh,
do you think she would have had to hide it so much?
Yeah.
Or on another
that's
franchise?
interesting. Because you're right. She was kind of saying with Jersey.
And because Jersey, we always said the women seem to
they
eat more.
there. Yeah. And there's more focus on food and family and those like
Yeah.
events that happen around the table.
Whereas I can kind of wonder, like,
Yeah.
where Yolanda's telling her daughter to just suck on a
You're
walnut.
right. I think there could have. Yeah, that's interesting.
She probably could have got away with it a
yeah.
lot more.
Or just like not felt guilty about it.
Mhm.
She would have felt like, well, and like she might have fit in more with that group, and that wouldn't
Yeah.
have been good for her.
And maybe she
health,
wouldn't have
but-
gotten help because here they kind of
Yeah.
brought it up on TV. and-
Exactly. Yeah, that's really interesting. What makes the book unique?
I actually said it's not unique, but I think that's her point. It's
Yeah.
that, in the beginning she says this is all of our story. This is lots of people's story.
Yeah.
And it's about how many people struggle with eating disorders.
Mhm.
And it's a look into that world.
Yeah.
So,
I know. I just said, well, it's honesty because
Mhm.
I feel like of all the Housewives books that we've read,
Mhm.
we have not read one yet that has the honesty that this one has.
yeah.
And also, like, it was nice just in, in kind of like our format here. It's in no way a self-help book. Like, it's an
Right,
honest to goodness
yes.
biography. Like,
Yes.
it's not like, this is how you recover and this is how
Yeah.
I did it. It's like, this is my story, and it may or may not, parts of it may resonate with you, parts of it. And that wasn't the point. The point was just, this is her story. And she's had to hide so much for so long, and she'd like to be honest about it and get it out.
Yeah. It's like she wants to show people this is how I feel. If you felt that way, other people have felt that way.
Exactly. I mean, like, she was just super, super honest about like how her pregnancies and feeding her kids and yeah. I mean, like she said, the way some women miss wine or sushi when they're pregnant was the way I missed anorexia. It's like she was just so honest about it and how deep of an issue it was.
Yeah. And I can't believe, because how did I not know she had 2 sets of twins?
I didn't know that either. I know.
How
I
did
felt
I
like I
miss
wasn't
this?
paying attention. Like, we weren't counting.
Like, what the heck? Because
well, here's the thing. Since you have triplets, I think if it's not triplets, we're just like, oh, twins. That's
but
easy.
like thinking about
Just
carrying
kidding.
twins it's higher risk.
Yeah, it is.
And then her weight and her heart, and you think about,
Yeah.
oh man, it just scared me for her.
Me too.
I mean, I
When
know
was-
she's
when I
through
was
it, but I
reading
was
those
like-
parts, I know, knowing that the kids came out okay
Yeah.
made it better. But like, yeah, you're right. It was a little anxiety producing.
What surprised you in the book?
I was kind of shocked that no one approached her about her weight. And I was thinking, I wonder if that's the difference between super thin versus super fat. Like when you're super fat, people will approach you about your weight. Like people will say, this is a problem. And so it's concerning to me to think that when people are really, really thin, that just everyone doesn't say anything about it. Because she kept saying like, well, maybe if that doctor had said it, Evan didn't say anything. My parents were like, good job, you did it. It helped her really to hide in plain sight. And she hid in plain sight so not well, but like, it's just what she did.
And she made sure. Yeah. Because you do sometimes hear people go like, oh, they're too thin. Then they're like, I'm too thin. But she said she made sure she wasn't too thin.
Right.
It's like she
kept on those like, yeah, I mean, it was such
she kept on the extra 5 pounds.
Right. It was
pregnancy.
Such a balance game. And can you imagine the exhaustion of that? Like, like there's certain things that you do and you just, I'm like, I'm tired because like having to do this mentally is just such a race. And it's like, that had to be for her, the counting and the balancing and the trying to keep it just right. I mean, it's exhausting. I can imagine to like keep all that up in the air.
You know, this actually takes me back to something I need to talk about that I forgot.
Yeah.
The failure of the medical profession is what I wrote down. Okay.
That's what I was kind of thinking of.
First of all, saying you don't go to college fat.
Right.
Just the what do you call it? Not sympathetic.
No, it's completely.
But then the fact that no one paid attention to how thin she was.
Right.
Her heart rate's in the 40s.
Yeah.
Oh, I run. Well, clearly she's extremely thin.
Yeah.
You know, it's like someone could have, sometimes I feel like in the medical field, they're so busy. And I think doctors are amazing people.
Yeah.
People in the medical field are. But this happens where they're so busy. It's like a problem comes in. It's not an acute problem. This has been a problem for a while.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily my responsibility to address it right now because it's been going on.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. If I open that can of worms, it's a big can of worms for me to open. Then I have to deal with it. And I don't necessarily know how to deal with it.
That's true.
So we're just going to kind of, you know, because weight loss, you can tell people like, okay, you got to lose weight. Do that.
Yeah.
You know, but this is a lot different mental illness.
It is completely different.
Medical profession probably in general doesn't know how to deal with.
And it's like the whole point is that she's not going to eat. So you can't just be like, and now you need to eat.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know, you know, being a dietitian specializing in eating disorders is a thing. Like, I know in town, because I work with dietitians, there are some that do specialize. And one of the dietitians that didn't specialize in eating disorders, she told me, she's like, it's hard for me. She's like, they know as much about food as I do. They probably know more about food than I do. Yeah. You know, because it's not about the food necessarily.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's really a whole other thing that you're dealing with and not like, not like, should I eat an orange or not? Yeah. Exactly. It's like, that's not really the point.
It's like when I'm doing diabetes education, they're like, can I eat too many carrots?
Yeah.
Just eat the carrots.
Just eat the carrots.
It's fine.
There's another issue here. Yeah. I also thought it was kind of interesting when she talked about how she and her sister, because at that one reunion she threw out, well, that she and her sister were estranged. And I remember being like, what? And she just sort of said like they just always fought their whole life. They've never gotten along. And they just drifted and drifted and drifted. And that's.
And like, she didn't like bring her up, like discuss her. I don't know if she's. Yeah.
It was just. Okay, that's it.
And it made me sad because it made me scared because my kids fight. And you always hope that like kids fight.
They're going to work it out.
Yeah, they're going to love each other later, right? Work it out. Like, what if they don't?
Well, she loved her brother a lot.
She loved her brother, but her brother was really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. As far as what surprised me, I said, I didn't know she went to law school. Yes. I didn't know she was a writer.
No, that she had that freelance journalism career. That was really interesting.
And all those websites.
Parenting and
And so that was really awesome.
Yeah.
And then I laughed because I've related to this. She said, I wish there were one of those people who, when they lost their appetite when they were anxious and felt the weight of the world on their shoulders. Because I always think that to myself, man, why can't I not eat when I get stressed? Yes. And it's one of those things, the grass is always greener on the other side. It's like, clearly she's suffering, you know.
Yes.
But it's...
Yeah.
So,
it's like, to be clear, as people who have struggled with like weight gain, we're not saying that this is the
right.
solution by any means.
It's
like they all have their own problems. It's just that's sort of the lens we're seeing it through.
Yeah, you see it through that lens, and she thought that too.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting, like how skewed your lens can be, because from the outside, you know, like we're looking at all this stuff, and it's like, you know, she snapped at Evan when he was saying to her, well, you eat little meals all day. That's so healthy. And she thought he was calling her fat.
Yeah.
And it's like, from an outsider perspective, you're like, well, and it's like, but it's just so interesting how you can just not see that at all. And I thought it was cool too. Like, she really does stand up for herself throughout, you know, like Housewives, and when she's talking about things with her husband, and she's not like this little wilting flower. I mean, she definitely still has a lot of her own personality behind things.
Yes, but a lot of it is so fake and she knows it.
Yeah.
It's like it's a fake confidence.
So that's what I mean, like the skewed lens.
Yeah,
it's
yes, exactly.
It's there. And, so many
It's
people
like,
are like, well, they were just so quiet. They never said anything. And it's like, again, I think that was part of her persona.
Yeah.
And like part of the, I love eating Gorton's fish all the time.
Yeah.
And like,
and
look, I just had dessert when she was on that Wyoming trip or whatever with the women. It's like, you can't be anorexic if you ate banana pudding.
Right. And she's got to put on the show and never let people know what she's scared to be found out, essentially. Which is another hard way to, not only is she counting all this stuff.
Oh my God. It's
but
like
she's scared being found out. She's hiding and trying to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. She said anorexia is self-protection by way of self-destruction. And that was like what one of the therapists told her. And she said, but it feels like the perfect fix, the therapist said. And that's why it's so hard to let go of. Mm-hmm. And I can see that because it's like when I say there's that part of me that I'm always like, I think it's the rational part of me. Like, so it must be right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can see her doing that too, because what does everybody say? If you want to be thinner, you count calories. So like, you're like, well, I'm doing what everybody said to do. Like, there's just this part of you that can't understand. That's what I've been told. Like, that's what I've been told works. And it's working. Yeah. And your brain just then can't go, no, it's not. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any lingering questions after finishing this book?
Actually, no, I don't.
Okay, I want to know who the former housewife is they live near. Oh. She said Evan kept seeing that he didn't want to be on the show.
That's right.
And there was all these cameras, and they live really close to a former housewife. She didn't say who, and I'm like dying to know who.
Gotta know.
I know.
Gotta
We may have to Google.
Did reading this book change your view of the author or the franchise?
I do think that it made me like her more. Except that I always liked her. Mm-hmm. So I think I still like her. I mean, I think I was really impressed by her writing skills, and all the work that you can see that she has done, like in therapy and with nutrition, and just, I mean, it's such a story like of growth and change, and it's just so honest. Like we always ask that other question, like how honest. I mean, obviously she's very honest. So yeah.
And I think it's funny how she talked about like, well, on TV, you want to wrap up the story. So like at the end, she's like, she admitted it. She gets help. She eats ice cream with her kids on the show. And now it's all wrapped up in a pretty bow. But she's like, she's still working. It's not.
I know. I do remember watching that
episode. I remember that scene. Yeah.
And I remember like it was really tense. Like I remember being nervous for her. And I remember her, you could tell she was still kind of just putting on a show for the kids and that it was still hard.
Yeah. And that's so interesting that was like really the thing that happened and you're reading about it. I don't know. And we saw it.
Yes.
The book made me, so I like Jackie, but I just didn't think too much about her. Like she was just kind of not so much on my radar.
Well, and as what we watched, she was a housewife and then she was a friend of. So it's like this season, she wasn't as relevant to us.
So I really enjoyed learning about her.
Yeah.
Another thing I didn't know, I forgot to mention. I didn't know she was brunette.
Oh, that's right.
Because she looks so good as a blonde. She looks like she should be blonde.
It looks natural, yeah.
Yeah, I really love her blonde hair. I mean, she'd look beautiful as a brunette too. I can't picture her as a brunette.
I can't either.
But anyway, the book made me mad at Teresa.
Yeah. Yes.
So Teresa, you're not cool.
Not cool.
You're really crappy.
No, she was.
Teresa's a crappy person.
Yeah, I did not like the way she acted at all, because it's like when we were talking about that part with Evan, where did I have that in my notes somewhere? But it's like she really did make up.
Yeah, that he was cheating.
And like, I mean, I just feel like.
And then she pretended to apologize, and then she came back harder with it.
Yes.
And the only reason she dropped it is because basically there was this focus on Lou. She didn't want to get called out for Lou's bad behavior.
And I want to be like, this is the thing. Like, I think take the things that are real on the show and deal with them. But bringing this stuff out of nowhere, and now it kind of does make me question a lot of stuff, that Melissa rumor and the other. Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, okay, how much can we trust Teresa? And then you're messing with this woman who's dealing with all this stuff, whose husband didn't want to be on the show. And she said that multiple times with the rumor. She's like, he didn't even want to come on the show. Leave him out of this. Leave him out of it. Like, it really pissed me off.
That really made me feel bad for him. Because normally I was be like, okay, just say it's not true. But then thinking about him and how he actually feels.
And he was kind of like, I knew it.
Yeah, he's like, some people are going to actually believe this about me. You know?
Yeah.
It sucks.
Should we judge the book by its cover?
Yes.
By its digital cover?
By its digital cover.
I'm a little sad we don't have the physical book.
So I thought the cover was beautiful.
It is beautiful.
She looks
so well done.
So pretty. So she's wearing a white sweater. It's just like her leaning on like a table, white background. She looks soft and cozy, doesn't she?
Does.
And she looks really pretty.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful cover. It's so simple and it's so effective.
Yeah.
And obviously the title, I think, is great.
Yeah. The Weight of Beautiful.
Wonderful
title. It's perfect. I was like, I wonder why no one's thought of that title before.
I know,
it's so good.
It's a great title.
Was there a ghostwriter?
No. So I looked, and on the Bravo website in this June article, They said she wrote the memoir without a ghostwriter, co-writer, or other collaborator, and she did it all from her desk at home. It was really important to write it myself, Jackie said about her decision to write the book alone. I don't think that anyone else could have captured the true raw emotion of what I felt.
Yeah, which is it's a
really well written
book. So I was like, wow, she's a really good writer.
She's a writer.
You know? Yeah, she's a legit writer.
She is.
Okay, Real Housewives, Unreal Housewives.
I mean, it's easy. It's a thumbs up.
Yeah, definitely a 2 thumbs up. It was really good. Totally recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Every two.
It's not like a happy book, but it has a good ending. But it's kind of a weightier read.
Yeah,
that was a bad word. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. No, but it's a harder read.
Yeah,
but it's also not. It's not so depressing. Like it was a page turner, and you were really into it, and it allows you inside of her head. And I think that that's always really interesting because you can draw parallels to things in your own life. And it just helps you understand what people are dealing with, which I just always think makes everybody a better human being.
Yeah. And then the pictures, seeing how skinny she was before her wedding.
It was terrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Because honestly, I read the book, but I think you're going to picture her like you picture her on the show. And when you see those pictures, all of a sudden you realize, because like I kind of kept going back to we think about her in the weight gain because that's where I come from. But when I saw those pictures, it was just like, wow, this is such a disease that does need people to understand more because she was just wasting away to nothing.
Yeah. And even when on the show, before she got help, because I remember I told you after she had gained weight the last season, I said, oh my God, I didn't realize how much better she would look. I thought she looked skinny and great, but she really looked healthier. But she said that like hurt her when people are like, you look healthier. And she to hear it.
Yes.
But it was weird because when I saw that, I was like, wow, you really do look so much more.
I know, because I want to say to her, like in this cover and as we see you now, I mean, she's gorgeous. And I think she looks great. I know.
So kind of weird.
Yeah. Okay, I wanted to read like the last paragraphs of the book. Okay. It kind of like ends on hope, I think. It said, learning to eat was only part of the battle. It was only a fragment of true recovery. Learning to accept myself, regardless of what the world thought of me, was the other part. Once I realized that, true recovery began. I finally understood that I'd never get past my eating disorder until I stopped looking for validation from the outside, in other people's opinions of my body, in the flashing numbers on a scale, in a stupid tag that hung on the inside of my pants. All of it was meaningless. All of it kept anorexia there and waiting in case I needed it again. It took me 46 years to love myself unconditionally and to understand that true freedom is not caring about what other people think of you, that happiness can't be added up and measured in a notebook, that you can't run your way toward acceptance, that skin and bones does not make you special. It took me a lifetime to realize that beauty has no weight. There is no weight of beautiful. There is just me.
That's really nice.
It's really pretty.
All right. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah. Good read, Jackie.
Good job.
Yeah. I just think it's a hard topic and she handled it so well.
She did.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I feel like our regular outro is a little weird, right?
Like we're going to bring the receipts of what? Like that's just like weird.
All right. Let's see. How about, remember we read the book.
So you didn't have to, but we want you to read this book.
We want you to read this one. Yeah, this isn't like the other ones we've read.
Good job, Jack.
Good job. Let's just go back to the 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Read her book. Yeah. It is beautiful.
Bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to help support us, please share it with others and leave a rating and review. Also, visit us on Instagram and Twitter, both at RH_on_RH, for fun pictures and polls, or email us at rhonrhpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and remember to stay out of the shade.